SAA plane veers off Brazilian runway and renewable energy to create 100,000 jobs. Good day to you. South African Airways has declined to comment on a report that an SAA plane carrying 153 passengers skidded and veered off the runway when it touched down in heavy rain in Sao Paulo in Brazil. According to a report in the International Aviation Herald newspaper, no passengers were injured. The Herald reports that the Airbus skidded shortly after touchdown in heavy rain. Passengers have praised the pilot for managing to steer the aircraft back onto the runway before slowing it to taxi speed. The aircraft underwent an inspection and wasn't able to depart on its return flight. ANC Secretary-General Gwede Mantashe has described a request by the National Union of Metal Workers for the replacement of the party's National Executive Committee as dangerous. He was speaking at a meeting of the ANC's National Executive meeting outside Pretoria. NUMSA was reacting to a recent call by President Jacob Zuma that there wasn't sufficient union representation in the NEC. Mantashe says such comments show a lack of knowledge about interaction between the ruling party and its allies.
Because once they make that statement that because you don't do this, there will be changes here, they make an assumption that there is no ANC. There's everybody else except the African National Congress. And I think it's an issue that we wish to appeal to everybody. Never to make that dangerous assumption that there is no ANC. It's them who exist and the ANC is at the mercy of everybody else.
Energy Minister Dipuo Peters says renewable energy projects across the country are expected to create over 100,000 jobs. Uppington in the Northern Cape has been identified to host the largest solar park in the world. The minister was speaking at a Black Management Forum meeting in Kimberley.
In terms of the new growth plan, which is the government's intended plan to create jobs, which says in 10 years we need to create 5 million jobs, we identified energy as one of the key job drivers. And in particular under energy, we're looking at renewable energy. And we then had to develop a strategy called the Green Economy Strategy, which ties in well with the climate change response plan of South Africa.
Metro Rail says the rail workers' strike by Transport and Allied Workers Union SATAWU is a failure. It says Metro Rail's been able to run an 85% train service with operations only marginally affected by the strike. SATAWU's Senzo Mshlangu.
No, I don't necessarily agree. They have their statistics. But as I'm talking to you now, we're consolidating our figures on the respective points where there was gathering. And I'll be able to say that probably in the morning, percentage-wise, as to whether our expectations were fulfilled or not. I wouldn't agree that it was a flop.
Head of the World Bank, Robert Zulik, says China's economy's reached a turning point and needs to embrace fundamental free market reforms if its economy is to continue to grow. He was launching the World Bank's report on China.
Currently, China relies on a mix of market and non-market measures to shape incentives for producers and consumers. And there's a lack of clarity in distinguishing the roles of the government, state enterprises, and the private sector. China needs to resolve these issues. Priority should be given to protect farmers' rights over agricultural land, expanding land registration, and rental rights. The Chinese economy of the future needs to rely more on markets in the private sector.
And finally, Turkish surgeons have removed both arms and legs from a patient who underwent the world's first quadruple limb transplant. 52 doctors performed the transplant in Istanbul on Friday, attaching 2 arms and 2 legs. The country's Science Council decided to remove the organs one by one due to metabolic complications. The operation came on the heels of the country's first ever face transplant. The top story at 5 o'clock. South African Airways has declined to comment on a report that an SAA plane carrying 153 passengers skidded and veered off the runway when it touched down in heavy rain in Sao Paulo in Brazil.